This episode of Now This Is Lit is brought to you by Audible. Check the link in the description to get your first Star Wars audiobook free. Everyone loves free things. Click that link. Do it. This show is also brought to you by our patrons. If you want to support the show in a different way, with just $1 a month, you can join our Patreon at patreon.com/StarWarsLitPod. You can get a sticker. You can get access to an exclusive show that we do every month that's wild and chaotic and fun and something you can only get by becoming a member of the Patreon. There'll be so many more perks very, very soon. But for now, do you want a sticker? Do you want a sticker that has a Now This Is Lit logo? Because it's fantastic and I love them. But I also want to give them away because there's just a stack of stickers on my desk. So if you want one, $1 a month. Patreon.com/StarWarsLitPod. A long time ago in a galaxy far, far away. You're listening to Now This Is Lit, a podcast about Star Wars books, the people who make them, and the readers who just can't get enough of them. I'm your host, Meg Dowell. I use she, her pronouns. And you may have seen online, sometimes, people will post about their controversial book opinions. Star Wars book hot takes, if you will. And I thought it would be fun if my producer and I got together, came up with some hot takes, controversial opinions about Star Wars books, and shared them with each other and also with you. So that's what we're doing this week. These are not, actually controversial, but they kind of are. It's half a joke and half not. You'll see. You'll understand. I hope you enjoy. It's been too recent since you've been on here where I can ask you what you're currently reading because I don't think it's changed.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't been reading a lot of Star Wars books recently because I've been on a bit of a non-Star Wars book kick.
But you're about to start reading something really exciting.
About to start reading Living Force.
I can't wait for you to read it.
I did do some comics recently.
Yeah.
So I caught up on the mainline High Republic comic for Phase 3. So I read issue, 5, I think is the most recent one.
Oh, I'm so behind.
At this time.
I'm so behind.
And then I read, because our library finally got the digital copy of it, and so I was waiting for that, I read the second half, the second volume of Phase 2 of High Republic Adventures.
Nice. Oh my god, I'm so behind. Maybe this afternoon I'll do some comics reading.
Yeah.
That'll be fun, actually. We'll see. Oh my god, I totally blanked on what I was just about to say. Would you like to introduce yourself to the people before we get into the topic that we are discussing today?
Yeah, sure. So, in case you do not recognize my voice yet from the multiple guest appearances that I have made, my name is Davor. I talk about Star Wars in a couple different places, including Clashing Sabers and a show that we co-host called Space Swifties. And I'm also your producer, in addition to being other things for you.
You're just so embedded into my life.
Yeah.
It's I can't say I mind. So, I've been planning episodes ahead for a while, just because I'm finally at a point in doing the show. I've been doing it long enough where I have figured out how to do things in advance instead of editing the show for Tuesday on Monday.
Yeah.
I don't typically do that anymore, and that is a good thing for my mental health. And so I had a really dumb idea. And as usual, you just went along with it without even hesitating. Which is, I thought, it'd be really fun and hilarious if we did an episode that's just our most controversial Star Wars book opinions, hot takes, whatever phrase you want to use. All in good fun, of course. There are some actually controversial opinions out there, but I thought it'd be funny to talk about our quote unquote most controversial. They might actually be controversial. I don't know. I don't know what your picks are. I thought that'd be fun. And it's Star Wars month as this episode is coming out. So why not? We're just here to have fun. So do you want to we're going to go back and forth. So we each have 4 picked out. and we can just go kind of back and forth and talk about our opinions and see how it goes. You good with that?
Yeah,
Cool.
I'm down.
All right, you being the guest, you go first.
All right, so as I told you before we hopped on for this, the hot takes that I picked to talk about, I think, range from actual what I think are hot takes to ones I'm not sure of to ones that I think are but really shouldn't be.
Yeah.
For reasons, and we'll get to when I get to one of those.
God.
So yeah, mine really kind of run the gamut. So I think I'll start off spicy. So I'll go with what an actual hot take
I
is.
like it.
And I'm coming for the High Republic, unfortunately.
Oh, dear.
And so my hot take number 1 is that the Nile, meh.
That's not that controversial.
Really?
I've seen a lot of people be like, I don't. For a lot of people, the Nile are not like threatening enough.
Yeah.
Is what I've come to understand. I don't agree with that opinion. See the Great Disaster. See the destruction of Starlight Beacon. See the Stormwall.
See, that is actually not the genesis of my hot take.
Okay.
Is I think the books have actually done a fairly good job of depicting them as threatening.
Yeah.
In terms of what they've done with all the examples that
Yeah.
you said. The reason I have my hot take off the Nile is that I don't think they're very interesting.
Okay.
And I also don't think that Marcion is very interesting as a character.
Mm-hmm.
I think, I will say to kind of cut against this, I think Phase 3, what we've gotten so far, has started to do interesting things with the Nile.
Okay.
Really around what Eye of Darkness is introduced about. Like, what are they doing in the wake of victory, and how are they going to move forward, and are they going to kind of set up an actual government? I think at that point now they're starting to do interesting stuff with them.
Okay.
But I just think, them just sort like them kind of boiling down to we want to raid and pillage and take for ourselves is like, sure, but I'm like, that's very thin.
Yeah.
That's why, that's one of the things I loved when we got to Phase 2, and why one of the reasons that Phase 2 has been my favorite phase so far, is that I think the path was really interesting.
Okay.
As this kind of quasi-religious cultish group that has this ideology about the Force. And I think having them as the antagonists in Phase 2 got the authors to kind of say and do a lot of interesting things with the characters about like faith and belief and creeds and what happens when it's, you know, your faith in a group or a cause is, you know, challenged or abused and so on. So I think there was a lot of interesting stuff that got done with that by having the path be what they are. Yeah. And then when I contrast that to the Nile, at least what we've gotten so far, again, who knows what they've got planned for the rest of Phase 3 and what we've gotten. I think, that it just sort of comes down to this, like, taking for ourselves, you know, conquer the galaxy, grab the, you know, the loot of war, Marcion just kind of being like, I don't want to be controlled by the Republic. Like, you can't tell me what to do. I'm like, okay, fine. Like, sure. Like, I don't really care about you and your cause. Like, so, yeah, it kind of comes down more to that than, like, they haven't been... I think they've actually done quite a bit to make them threatening between the various crises and the Nameless and all that and the Stormwall stuff. That, I think, is done really good. Yeah. I think where they've kind of faltered for me is I don't think they have motivations that I really personally as a reader care about.
Okay. No, that's fair. I kind of felt that way through part of Phase 1. And then Tempest Runner came out. Your favorite audiobook, favorite audio drama of all time. No, because like that really like gave you, especially in like the flashbacks, gave you more of like an insight into like how they operate and like one particular character and why she does the things she does and has the motivations that she does. It clearly didn't work for you, but no, that's kind of what did it for me. I was like, oh, like this makes a little bit more sense. No, that's fair. See, everyone's entitled to their own opinion for a reason. Because, yeah. I think I'm going to come in really hot with my first one.
Okay.
We've sort of touched on this before, but not in depth. So let's do that. I don't think Lost Stars is the best Star Wars book of all time.
All right. I'm not surprised by this hot take.
No, I know, but like a lot of people, some may have already turned off the episode. They're gone. Now we can speak freely. It is not, I want to be clear about this. It is not that I do not like Lost Stars. It's not that I don't think it's a good book. I love Claudia Gray. I love the story. I love the characters. It is a very good book. It's well done. It deserves the praise that it gets. I think it's overhyped.
Okay.
I think too many people are like, this is the best Star Wars book, and like don't take into account like any of the other books that have come out, YA or otherwise, that are just so much better. I get why people like it, but I don't personally understand why they like it as much as they do. Like every time I post my favorite books, which my top 5, let's say, changes. You know, like it's not a consistent, like solid, like these are the top 5. It changes when new books come out. It just changes based on, you know, what kind of Star Wars I'm into at the moment. Some of them stay, and some of them I'll change out for other ones. Lost Stars is never in my top 5, and when I don't post like the best YA, best whatever, and include Lost Stars, I get so much like pushback on that. Like, where's Lost Stars? Why have you not included Lost Stars? It's the best Star Wars book. And I'm like, to me, it is a very good Star Wars book. It is on my list of Star Wars books people should start with for multiple reasons. I agree that it's like a good entry point for people. I agree that if you like friendship in Star Wars, if you like romance, if you like stuff about the Empire, if you like that era, the Old Testament.
The Old Testament.
It's Easter, listen.
The Old Testament.
That's the best thing that's ever happened on the show. Original trilogy. How did that even happen?
I don't know. I like it though.
Same initials. I agree with all that. Where like there are arguments for it being like you should start with this, you might like it if, but I just don't think it's as good as people make it out to be. Like people go crazy over Lost Stars, and it's great if it is your favorite book and you love it and you've read it however many times. Like I'm happy for you, but I just don't think it's like as good as, you know, like other books. I don't think it's like at the top. And that's just the way that I feel.
All right. I mean, I knew this going into it because we've had this conversation.
Yeah.
We literally did a Lost Stars episode where we
Right.
kind of touched on this a little bit.
Right.
I mean, again, I think much like with mine, you know, that's a fair opinion. People will have different tastes and preferences, and things will land and resonate for folks for different reasons in different ways, or not land with people for different reasons.
It's a good book. It's just not like the best Star Wars book ever written. You know, I say that with love.
Yeah. It is my personal favorite canon book, as you know.
I know. I'm aware. That's why we talked about it on the show.
Yeah.
Oh, Old Testament.
Old Testament.
I'm never going to get over it. Oh,
No.
my God.
All right, my second hot take. Okay, this falls on the spectrum of I'm not sure this is actually really a hot take.
Okay.
Because usually, you know, one of the kind of qualifying features of a hot take is you have to have a strong opinion on the other end of it. Right? Like with your Lost Stars one.
Right.
Where, like, you don't think it's the best Star Wars book, and then you have people on the other side who very strongly believe that.
Right.
I don't know that there's a very strong counter to mine.
Okay.
So in this case, it might just be more an opinion, but we'll throw it in hot take anyway.
A spicy opinion, if you will.
Yeah. All right. I think the Anakin Skywalker we get in Brotherhood, that is Mike Chen's book, is the best Anakin Skywalker that we get anywhere. Movies, TV shows. Brotherhood Anakin is the best Anakin.
It is very good. Mike Chen, like, knows Anakin, like, front to back.
Yeah. I think that book and, like, the version of Anakin that we get there and the relationships that we see, how he gets on with, you know, the other Padawans and stuff and the other Jedi at the temple, I think that book really sells why Anakin is, looked up to and maybe revered is a little bit strong, but like why he is this kind of celebrity Jedi during the Clone Wars. I think that book really sells that in a way that, I think others kind of, gesture to that and to varying degrees do that, and whether it's in Clone Wars and in other parts of the media, but I don't think any of them really get it quite as well as Mike Chen does in that book.
Yeah.
Like, you really understand why people love Anakin Skywalker.
Yeah.
From that version in there.
Mm-hmm. Anakin is a great teacher, and we see that a lot in when he's training Ahsoka. But that book also made me realize that he would have been a really good dad, too.
Yeah.
Like, just the way that he, like, treats the younger Jedi and, like, his patience, and like, he's obviously not perfect, but like he almost like, that's almost like a strength when he's then turning around and teaching or mentoring or whatever you want to call it. I need to reread that book.
Yeah, me too.
Anakin is so good in that book. So good. Yeah, I don't know how controversial it is, unless you like, people are going to say, like, Anakin was great in this, and this.
Yeah, that's the only way. Like, if people have other versions of Anakin that they prefer, or they think that none is inherently better than the other.
Yeah.
I just think, when I read that book and the way that Mike Chen wrote Anakin, I'm like, oh, okay, I get it now.
Yeah.
Because he kind of, there is in other media kind of around the Clone Wars, there's sort of the allusion to, like, there's the hero with no fear, which I think is originally a Legends thing, but I think it does end up in canon. So you get this sense of, like, oh, he's kind of, again, like I said, he's kind of the celebrity Jedi. But you just sort of know that abstractly, I think, in other ways. Like, particularly, like, Clone Wars spends a lot of time with Anakin, of course, but really in the context of the relationships that he has one-on-one. You don't really get a sense of, like, the kind of larger either Jedi's the institution or the galaxy, kind of in a bigger sense, like that, people are really like looking to or paying attention to Anakin. But then you see him in this book and you're like, oh, okay, this is why people love him. Yeah. The way that he has that kind of mentor role, that kind of fatherly role, like you kind of get it now.
Yeah. No, definitely. You know what would be a great thing to do at some point? Read Brotherhood. And then immediately after reading Brotherhood, read the Revenge of the Sith novelization.
Oh.
I was trying to make it a trilogy. I was trying to think of another book that paired with that, and I couldn't think of one on the spot. But ooh, that would hit real hard.
Yeah.
I know Revenge of the Sith novelization is that weird like middle ground between like, is it Legends, is it canon, or is it something else? But ooh, I have an episode idea. I'm going to write that down really quick.
Okay, go for it.
This is what happens when we are talking. And then I'll go on to
your hot take number 2.
To my hot take number 2, which is the Essential Legends collection is the best thing Star Wars Publishing has ever done.
Whoo! Yeehaw! I need a fan. It's gotten hot in here. I'm just blowing some air at me right now with my hand. I'm just waving a little bit because it got hot in here. It
is actually hot in here because the oven's going.
Yes, yeah. We're making a chicken pot pie.
Very warm in here. I know that you're all so upset with me right now. Well, listen, Star Wars Publishing over decades has done amazing things, amazing series, amazing initiatives. All of it fantastic. That statement in itself is controversial, well, whatever. The reason I think the Essential Legends collection, actually there are probably multiple reasons, is the best thing that Star Wars Publishing has ever done is because, 1, unabridged audiobooks. Legends books, especially the earlier ones, audiobooks are not, full audiobooks, unabridged, are not as accessible. That's just how things were produced. When you get to the later, like, Fate of the Jedi and stuff, like the full audiobooks exist for those. But take like Outbound Flight, Survivor's Quest, you know, books that had abridged audiobooks that were enough of the book to like get the idea, but still not the full experience. Because of the Essential Legends collection now, not every book, but a lot of those books now have audiobooks that make these stories accessible to more people. And more people are likely to be able to experience these books in full. I think that's amazing. And the new audiobooks are also really, really, really good. And to have that opportunity and a reason to take these Legends books, a lot of people are always complaining that like they like rebooted the Star Wars publishing, or they nuked Legends, or whatever the phrase people use. Like, Legends is still alive and well, despite the fact that they're not doing more stories that are quote unquote Legends. Like, look at the new stories that we're getting. Look at the new audiobooks. Like, Legends still matters. And like that's one reason the Essential Legends collection exists. But also, because of these books being published, Legends are more top of mind in general, especially for newer readers who may have only read canon or may have only read a few Legends books before. Like when these new books come out, it's like, it's not getting new Star Wars books, but it has that same feel. So the excitement for Legends is there again. And that just makes me happy that more people are... What's going on? That more people are more likely to be able to, like, celebrate and, oh, this new Essential Legends collection book just came out. I've wanted to read it. Let me grab that and have a reason to read it. Not like the motivation to get around to that book you've wanted to read, Kenobi, for example, and you haven't gotten to it yet. There it is. It's on the shelf. You go to your local bookstore and it's there. Hello. That's really cool. And I just think to have this initiative of almost, I'll say, making Legends cool again. They were never not cool, but it's good for everyone. There's no downside to it, is my opinion. And I just think it is one of the greatest things they've done so far.
Yeah, it's been, I mean, for somebody like me, who did not grow up reading the books back when they were the expanded universe, and who has always kind of found getting into those books intimidating because there's such a huge swath of them, and the quality of the books is all across the board depending on what you pick, and it's unclear kind of where to start because you're spanning so many time periods and you have a lot of books and book series that are interconnected where you like, particularly a lot of the kind of like, 9, 10 plus book series. Like you look at one of them and like, you're like, oh, okay, I'm going to start with this one. And then someone's like, well, you actually need to read this other 10 book series first to kind of set up. And there's our other music. I don't know if the mic is picking it up.
It probably
So
is.
We should go take care of that.
Dinner is ready. I finally got to go on my Essential Legends collection, rant. I've talked it up before plenty of times on this show, especially in the episode I did with Jared about the Essential Legends collection. But I finally got to, really, go off on it. And that just makes me feel good because I just love this initiative so much. It is my favorite thing that's happening in Star Wars publishing right now. And there's so many good things happening. And that tells you just how passionate I am.
I'm back.
You are back.
Pot pie is good.
Yes.
It is now just chilling on the stove.
I love that for the pie. I just had to fill in some space,
No, that's fine. That's good. But yeah, as I was saying, for folks like me.
Yeah.
Who've always had those challenges of figuring out the inroads and, getting a sense of kind of quality and what are the most important Legends books in terms of their impact on fandom and larger Star Wars storytelling. This initiative has been really helpful in that way, in terms of giving some inroads and kind of pointing you in the direction of here are the ones. Now there has, as we've gotten successive waves, there has been some, if you look among fans, there's been some quibbling about is this really an Essential Legends book? And are we getting to a critical mass where almost every Legends book will be deemed an essential Legends book? I don't think we're ever going to get that far because there's a lot of them.
Right.
But, those kind of questions aside, and again, that comes down to a lot of kind of subjective taste opinions about, like, how you feel about certain books and whatnot.
Right. Well, that's the other thing, is that there are so many Legends books. Like, them releasing, like, 3 or 4 at a time, like, 3 or 4 times a year. Like, it just, if you're not as familiar with Legends, you can see, like, 3 new books came out. Not new, but 3 books were released. I want to read this one and this one. And then it's easier. It's maybe less intimidating, if you will, to get into Legends if you never have before.
Yeah. I would love to get a sense of the behind the scenes of how the Essential Legends is put together.
Tom!
Because, there are gimmies. They're like Heir to the Empire, Plagueis, whatever. Like there's low-hanging fruit of like, oh, okay, like these books are of course important and have had a huge impact.
Uh-huh.
But then there are other ones, there are other titles where it's like, okay, like people like this, but it's like, what is influencing it coming out now? Like what gets decided in terms of, getting put into particular waves and such. Like I'm really interested about like what those kind of conversations, like how do people kind of figure that out? Because in a lot of cases, it does kind of come down to subjective of like people being like, well, someone might say like, well, okay, like this is a decent Legends book, but is it an essential Legends book? And people might be like, well, no, there are different opinions about that. So like, I'd be really interested in like knowing what those conversations look like. Are there criteria? Are people like, are people like polling where you get a book and then it's like, like people are kind of putting down like, yes, include it. No, don't include, what I mean? Like that's where I'm really interested in that.
Me too. Stay tuned, maybe, for more on that. All right, you got more.
Yes, so we are now on hot take number 3.
Yeah.
And this falls on the spectrum of this should not be a hot take, but it is. And I just, like, even as I'm thinking about saying the words, I am feeling secondhand embarrassment on behalf of Star Wars fandom because we should not have gotten to a point where I need to say these words.
Oh, okay.
And that there would be a not insignificant faction of people who would disagree with these words. Folks, I feel it in my body.
Go.
Folks, Jedi Battle Scars is a great book.
I was not ready.
I mean, what I have seen in the past, almost like a little bit more than a year, because I think it came out in March, right? Yeah. Of last year? Mm-hmm. Yeah, a year and change. It's been that sensation, not unlike coming out of The Last Jedi, of, you consume this piece of Star Wars media, and you're like, oh, this is great, people will love this, and then you get on Twitter, and you're like, what like, I've fallen through the rabbit hole. What's happening here? Mm-hmm. The weird kind of venom that this book has gotten baffles me. Mm-hmm. I do not understand. I get, for example, it not being, one of your favorite Star Wars books.
Yeah.
Or feeling that it's just kind of middle in the road. Like, again, that gets down to the subjective taste, and it might vary depending on how invested you are in terms of, have you played Fallen Order? How much do you like the kind of Cal story? And I almost said the Ghost Crew, the Mantis Crew, like some of it can come down to that, where like if you're not a video game person or whatever, you're not that invested in the story, then by extension, you will not be as invested in the next installment of that story. But then the weird kind of hate of being like, this is a bad book, or like, it's badly written or whatever. I'm like, what are we on the same timeline? Like, what's happening here? Like, what are we doing? Have we read the same book?
Yeah.
It's a great book. I finished this book and absolutely loved the storytelling. I thought Sam Maggs does a great job in terms of exploring the relationship of these characters. Mm-hmm. And I think it adds so much greater depth and tragedy once you get into Survivor and they've gone their separate ways, because you get at the end of the book and you're like, oh, like they've had a lot of this conflict throughout the whole book and like things are messy, but they got to the end and they figured it out, and you know they're going to be going on their adventures and stuff, and then you get to Survivor and like, oh man, oh no, they scattered to the winds. It's like, what happened? Like exactly. it makes it even it makes that hurt even more than if you just jump from Fallen Order to Survivor.
Right.
So yeah, I don't understand. I mean, I'm going to say that I understand it a little bit. Yeah. I know one of the things that people do not like about this book, but I understand it, and I also don't understand it.
Yeah. When I talked to Sam last year, after we were done recording, I got a little bit of insight into one of the reasons a lot of people are meh about this and her stuff in general. It's not great. I won't like get into it because off the record, et cetera, but it's not. I guess what I'll say is a lot of people use this is not a good book, this is not a well-written book to say things without saying things.
Yeah.
You're not fooling anybody. Like, we know what you really think. Yeah, it's not great, but I think it's a really, really good book. I'm speaking as I'm trying to remember the point I was going to make. Oh, I remember. I've seen a criticism multiple times that people are like, the author didn't understand the characters or didn't portray the characters in the way that they are in the games or in the first game. And I'm like, you got to think critically about stories. Like, I'm not calling out anybody in particular because, again, like I said, I've seen it multiple times. I have this opinion about, like, many different Star Wars stories where characters in certain stories are not like how they are in other stories. I'm alluding to a specific thing that I'm not going to get into right now. There's a reason things are written that way. It's called character development. It's called you are not the person you were 20 years ago.
Yeah.
5 years ago, 1 year ago. It's not a good excuse. Just say what you really don't like about the book. We're getting into very controversial territory here, which is fine.
Yeah.
But this is such a good book, especially if you are like, you do not have to read this book to appreciate both the games. Like, it is designed specifically so that if you go from Fallen Order to Survivor and don't read the book, you're fine. They explain what they need to explain.
Yeah.
It is what it is. But the book is such a good, like, in between. And I recommend it so hard. And don't listen to the people who say it's not good. Just give it a try and form your own opinion instead of listening to the internet. It's so good.
It is.
It's so good.
It's such a great book.
Like, even if you're not a video game fan, like, the book is not a video game. Like, it has elements of it, of course, because this is Sam Max. But, you don't have to, I can't say this confidently because I don't know for sure, but, like, I would say that you probably could read it not having played the first game, and you'd still maybe be able to appreciate it.
Yeah, I think so.
I don't think you would, like, appreciate it as in depth, because that would be the first time you're meeting the characters and you don't know all that they've been through before. But I think you still could if you really didn't. I mean, if you don't want to play the games, you'd find a way to watch the cutscenes. I don't know.
Yeah.
But yeah, great book. Highly recommend.
Yeah, it's my hot take number 3. Again, shouldn't be a hot take. We shouldn't have gotten to this point, but we're at this point, so I have to say it.
I know. Every time I post about this book, it's like, this isn't a good book. I'm like, elaborate. Tell me what you mean.
Embarrassing. People are embarrassing yourselves.
I mean, really. That's how I feel about most people who, when I post about things, when I post about the Higher Republic, people are like, this is bad. I'm like, have you read it? I'm not like, this is not actually one of my controversial opinions, but I'm actually not convinced that a lot of people who have criticisms like that about books have actually read them. I feel like sometimes you're watching a YouTube video and you're just spitting back what other people have told you to say. I don't like it. But I always try to remember that people are not like this in real life, for the most part. The internet is a very specific, weird place to be sometimes. All right, my third one. This has been on my mind recently, because, again, of the internet. Not in a bad way this time, but I, for the most part, and I'll elaborate on what I mean, don't think if you're someone who's never read a Star Wars book, I don't think Legends books are good to start with. I don't think they're a great entry point for someone who wants to get into Star Wars books. There are exceptions to this. I think Kenobi is a fair one to start with because it's set in a time where it could still fall into the canon timeline. Like, it doesn't mess anything up. Kind of like John Jackson Miller told me, because it couldn't really. Yeah. It kind of had to exist in its own thing for reasons. There are exceptions. But I don't think, like, Heir to the Empire, Plagueis, the Darth Bane trilogy, like, I don't think, like, people love these books, and there's nothing wrong with loving these books. I think they're good, too. I'll use Heir to the Empire as an example, because a lot of people are like, how could you not have this on your list of books to start with? Like, how dare you? I think Heir to the Empire, the trilogy as a whole, is good. I think it can be appreciated as a historical artifact. And I think overall, it's a really good series. You don't agree? But no, you don't hate it, but you're fine with it.
Yeah.
Timothy Zahn deserves to be celebrated for it. And Heir to the Empire did so much for what has happened in Star Wars publishing since then. It deserves the praise that it gets. I have no problems with it. That's not why I don't recommend it to start with. I don't recommend Legends in general to start with for the most part, because I just think canon has better entry points. I think something like Lost Stars, something like Princess and the Scoundrel, something like, more books that I've recommended to start with are not coming to mind, but books that maybe fall easier into the current timeline that we're in, that the sequel trilogy follows, etc. I just think it's a better place to start. That doesn't mean that someone who's just getting into Star Wars books and has read some canon can't then go to Legends. It's just, I think Legends are riskier to start with, and it's not that I think you'd be confused, but you also could be. It's really hard as Star Wars book readers, as people who are in this world, who understand, a lot of how it works. Like, if you've never touched a Star Wars book before and you go to your local comic book store and there's a bunch of Star Wars books, like, other than some of the books maybe having a Legends banner on the top, like, it might be very confusing to be like, okay, I'm going to read Heir to the Empire, which starts at this time in the timeline, and then be like, well, how does this fit into the sequel trilogy? It doesn't, because it's technically not it doesn't follow the same, it's not like people can't figure it out. Like, people are smart. It's just, I think it's better to start with the canon books that I typically recommend. Again, not because Legends is bad, not because people shouldn't read it. It's just, it's so overwhelming and confusing. And the other part of that is Legends is so overwhelming, and there's so much. And a lot of Legends builds on other Legends, and that's the case with canon too. But I do think canon does have better places to ease you into what can be a very overwhelming, confusing place to be. And that is a very controversial opinion, because every time I'm like, here are the books to start with, people are like, what about Heir to the Empire? And I'm like, you may have started with that, and that's great for you. But I don't think everyone should. Yeah.
No, I get that. I mean, that kind of dovetails with our Essential Legends collection conversation. Of some of the challenges being an outsider getting into Legends, and some of those obstacles. And I think even though we've also had the conversation about canon and canonicity and the extent to which that should matter or shouldn't in terms of the media you consume and the value that you assign to that media, but I think there is still some value in it in terms of like canonicity from the standpoint of understanding how stories connect to one another, and lead into in a forward direction and also connect backwards.
Right. Exactly.
That there is a value in starting in canon because you do get a sense of the story as it presently exists.
I really think that, and this is obviously my personal opinion, I think the trajectory for someone who wants to get into Star Wars should be start with canon and then go to Legends as an appreciation for the history of where we were compared to where we are now. And
also as an appreciation of the ways in which Legends continues to inform canon.
Yes, exactly. You know how many authors are like, this Legends thing inspired this thing that happened in my canon book? Most of them, probably.
Yeah. I mean, I think that is something that has expanded significantly, particularly in the last couple of years.
Yeah.
That there's been an increasing number of Legends pulls. I mean, not just in books, of course, but also in terms of the TV shows and stuff. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, I think having that, I mean, again, it's not essential from the standpoint of understanding the canon story, because the canon story, is its own story and it will tell you what you need to know. Yep. Like, for example, like Palpatine's resurrection, a thing happening both Legends and canon. You don't need the Legends version to understand the canon version, right, because the canon version is telling its own version of Palpatine's resurrection. Right. But in terms of that, the history and the appreciation and this didn't just come out of nowhere. This wasn't just, dreamt up a couple years ago. This has been a kind of a thing that has been a part of Star Wars.
Right. And all this being said, I always try to keep in mind that not everyone who wants to read a Star Wars book wants to read all of the Star Wars books. Everyone is not like me, There are a lot of people who want to read all of them, and there are a lot of people who just want to read some, or they just want to read, I want all the books with Luke Skywalker in them.
Yeah.
There is nothing wrong with that. And you can read whatever you want. If you want to read Heir to the Empire because you love Luke, there's nothing wrong with that. It just, I try to make my recommendations as easy and, more as straightforward as possible, just because you never know. So that's really it. You can do whatever you want, but that's my opinion.
All right. We're at the last ones. Yep. Our fourth hot takes.
Oh, man.
All right. I got a good one. I like ending on this one.
Oh boy.
I think we're going from book ending with saucy to saucy.
Oh, okay.
And it actually dovetails a little bit to my last hot take.
Okay.
And, I mean, it's sort of about books and just kind of printed Star Wars, but a little bit more about how Star Wars publishing kind of fits in within the larger media universe of Star Wars. So my hot take number 4 is that I think Star Wars books and comics have become too convenient a repository for Star Wars' queer representation. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of great queer characters that we get in books and comics.
Yeah.
Especially more recently with the High Republic. You've got Lula and Zine. Mm-hmm. You've got Terret and Sarret. Yes, I got that right. In Alphabet Squadron, you have Yurica and... I'm blanking on her name. I cannot remember her name. Yurica and the one who flies the A-Wing? No, that's Willark. I don't know. I can't think of her name right now. The B-Wing pilot, I think.
Yes, God.
Yes.
It's been too long since I read them.
Yeah, I'm sorry, freed heads. I'm sorry, I can't remember the name. That's a real faction, believe me. Okay. Sinjir in the Aftermath trilogy. Mm-hmm.
There's so many that you can't even think of all.
Marin! That we just, coming off of Jedi Battle Scars, right? There's a lot of them, and there's a lot of great queer storytelling. Vernestra. Yeah. Oh my God, I'm once again... Guy who looks like Matthew McConaughey in High Republic. Oh my God, he's...
Come on!
He pilots the vessel.
I know who you're talking about.
Oh my goodness, but that guy.
Oh, okay, it's Geode and... Oh my God.
But anyway.
We're real fans, I promise.
Yes, we are real fans, but you all know who we're talking about. There's a fantastic constellation of queer stories and queer characters in Star Wars books and comics. And I'm grateful that it has both been expanding and that we've gotten different types of queer stories and storytelling and storytellers. Mm-hmm. And I think all of that is important in terms of expanding Star Wars' representation and the capacity of fans on a wide spectrum to be able to see themselves in stories and to be able to relate to different characters and stories and storytelling. And there's been a bunch also in the FACPOF books. We've gotten a number one. Mm-hmm. I mean, and, you know, again, we just talked about Sam Maggs, her Star Wars debut in the fantastically titled Luke on the Bright Side.
Oh, my God, yes.
Like, that gives us by Luke, you know?
Yeah.
Like, there's been a great number of examples, but I don't love how much of the proportion of the queer characters and storytelling we're getting is concentrated within the print media and is particularly not on screen. Or even, like, I mean, I don't know, like, this might be a little bit more on the bubble, but I'm thinking about, like, Rebecca Roanhorse in Resistance Reborn doing a lot of kind of storm pilot, or, like, never going, like, completely out there and, like, you know, like, saying that is what it is, but gesturing a lot in that direction.
Really playing it up.
Yeah, but I don't like, I think it has become too easy to just put it in a short story or put it in a comic or a book and kind of just leave it there for the most part. I mean, again, you know, that's not to say, like, we're not getting it on screen. Like, you know, we got Valen Cinta and Andor most recently. Mm-hmm. There are other examples. There's examples in Resistance. It's out there.
Yeah.
But in terms of just the quantity and the depth, like how much, you know, you're actually focusing on these stories and really fleshing them out and the characters.
Right.
Yeah, I don't like that so much of this is being done in books and comics relative to other media.
Right. And, like, as important as it is to, like, celebrate that we do have that, like, it's not enough. And not everyone, like, I know we're in this Star Wars book bubble, and it feels like, you know, everyone who's a Star Wars fan, like, knows what's going on. There are so many Star Wars fans who don't touch books and comics.
Leox Gyasi.
I could not, I kept being like, Axel? It was something like that.
Yeah. Gyasi, I think that's how you pronounce it.
We got there. But
Sorry.
like, think of, like, if you're only watching on-screen stuff and you're like, queer representation would be great. It's there, but it's not really there enough. It's not celebrated.
Yeah.
And I will say, and this is not an excuse, it doesn't make it better. This is an on-screen Disney problem as a whole.
Yes. Yes.
There was that, like, famous, like, live-action Beauty and the Beast moment where, like, there was, like...
Gaston and the other guy?
Yeah, like, it was there, but it was not there, and, like, people are like, it was not enough. Like, it's not. It's not. And you can't just, like, put it in there and be like, yeah, we did this. Like, there has to be more of an effort. And we won't get into, like, all of the reasons it could possibly be like this. Those are all still just excuses anyway.
Yeah.
It's very frustrating, and we don't talk about it enough, and we should. But it's hard because it feels like there's so much we can't do. You know, like, I think we just keep talking about it, keep, like, you know, both celebrating the things that we do have, but also, like, calling for, you know, on-screen Star Wars to do better. And it's not that people haven't been doing this.
Yeah.
But, you know, it's so frustrating.
Yeah.
It's so frustrating and exhausting to see over and over and over again, or not see over and over again. And you know what? Like, it's so frustrating.
Yeah. I think it sort of like what you said, and again, I'm probably not the best spokesperson to be having this conversation about, but I think it does come down to a lot of just kind of banging that drum, which is like celebrating the stories that exist, showing that there is an appetite and a hunger and a demand for these stories, but then also, I mean, through that, indicating, like, yes, like, give us more, give it in different forms. Yeah. I think it's that 1-2 of, like, acknowledging and celebrating what's there, but then also just kind of keeping up the demand and the call for more of these kinds of stories in different formats, in different mediums.
Yep.
I mean, at the end of the, like, again, if you would think that, like, Disney being, capitalist corporation, responding to consumer, tastes and preferences and demand, like, all the Econ 101 stuff, like, you would think at a certain, like, eventually that there will be kind of, a tipping point in that way. So I think just, kind of keeping up that pressure and insistence, I think, from like an outside consumer standpoint, like
right.
if you don't have any kind of insider power to really affect things from, like, as a creator or, a story group person or whatever,
right.
like, if you're not one of those people,
right.
you don't have that kind of influence. You're just here on the outside reading these books, watching these shows, talking about them on Twitter. What can you do? It kind of boils down to that kind of
right.
stuff.
And, like, if you, like, there are so many different factors that could go into it. If you're thinking of, like, the loud minority who are like, that we can't have this, be louder. That's what I always say.
Yeah.
Be louder and be the majority. Yep. That was a really good one.
Thank you.
It shouldn't be controversial, but here we are. Now it's 2024.
It is, yeah. That's the other thing about it is, yeah.
Oh, we could talk about this for so long.
And again, there are better guests for you to have on to
Correct.
have that conversation than me.
Correct.
But I had this moment. We're talking about things that are controversial related to books, so might as well.
Allyship is valid. But you're also right. All right, my last one. Another shouldn't be controversial, but it is. I think middle grade Star Wars books are some of the best Star Wars stories that we've gotten and will continue to get. And too many of you are sleeping on them because they're for kids. Star Wars is for children. Star Wars is for 12-year-olds. I don't know what it is about middle grade books that turn so many people off. Now, I have, interacted with plenty of people who are like, I tried middle grade, it's not for me. That's fine. Like, I understand why you may not vibe with it. That's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. I'm not judging you. But there's so many good stories that are under this label of middle grade that so many people are missing. Just because, they've heard it's not good, or they tried one or two and didn't like it, or, they see like, oh, it's for young kids, it's probably not for me. Middle grade is specifically written for a younger audience. Like, it has to appeal to a younger audience. It has to be appropriate for a younger audience. All of that is fair. But I am in my 30s and get so much enjoyment out of these books. They're not written for me. It doesn't matter. Battle for the Arena.
Yes.
Escape from Valo.
Test of Courage.
Yes, Test of Courage. There's so many good middle grade books. I have an entire stack of them, especially from the sequel trilogy initiatives where they release books prior to the movie coming out, because there's so many of them. They are so good. The stories are inspiring. Sometimes they're funny. They're just arguably perfect. And that's not to say that, like, other stories that are, written from an adult perspective, because that's the thing. And when I was talking to George Mann, go listen to that interview because he touches more on it when we talked. Like, the biggest difference between a middle grade book, for example, and an adult novel is that you're getting a story from a different perspective. So if you, like, for example, if you read the middle grade books set in the High Republic, it's the same things are happening.
Yeah.
Like, I won't spoil Escape from Valhalla because you haven't read it, and a lot of people maybe have not read it yet. One of the characters is dealing with the aftermath of the attack on the Republic Fair. And this character is, like, traumatized by what happened. That whole event happens in an adult novel. But in this middle grade book, you're getting the aftermath of that same thing or memories of that same event just from someone else who just happened to be younger. They're still dealing with the same things, but it's told in a way and from a perspective where someone maybe who is younger can be like, oh, like, I've felt that way before. I understand what that feeling is that they're describing.
Yeah.
Like, that's the biggest difference. It's the same, obviously you're going to describe things or depict things in an adult novel differently. But in general, it's the same. It's Star Wars. People are experiencing the same events. It's just from someone else's eyes, And that's really the biggest difference. And again, not vibing with it is fine. Like, not all Star Wars books are going to vibe with everyone. I just think, like, the characters and the stories that we've gotten and will likely continue to get are just so unique. And the fact that, like, so many might be missing out on these great things just because, I'm just interested in the adult novels or whatever it is. Like, just give it a try. Just try it. Find a story or a character or an era that you think you might like and try it. Because you're already familiar with so many of the authors that are writing these, too. It frustrates me to no end. And we are going to, at some point, do a whole discussion, me and some other people who also love middle grade books, about why they're important and which ones you should read and, what middle grade is all about and why it can be for everyone. So stay tuned for that at some point. I'll let you know.
Yeah, absolutely second everything that you just said. I mean, we already talked about it on the best of for 2023, but Battle for the Arena is, like, among recent books, is one of the ones that has most stayed with me. It's a really good book. I will probably be yelling about it again if Hunters ever gets its worldwide release. Honestly, at this point, it's if.
Did it just get delayed again?
No, there was something about, like, it's coming soon. You've been saying that for 3 years. But anyway, like, that's a wonderful book. A test of courage. Really strong start in terms of the middle grades for High Republic. From the debut of Vernestra
the origin of Vernestra.
Yes. The Phase 2 middle grades with Rupert Natani is great. Like, it adds so much to when you get to the Tales of Light and Life story with her in there. Like, if you read that story and then you have the middle grade books in there, like, it's such a wonderful little arclet, that's happening in Phase 2. So, yeah, I think it does come down to a lot of folks who are, again, fans in their 20s and 30s plus, not really knowing what to do because they are so far out of the demographic of, even more so than, let's say, YA, although, like, YA has a version of this issue, but it's not as severe.
Yeah.
But, yeah, not really knowing what to do about a book that is literally written for a 6-year-old,
Yeah.
6 or 7-year-old. Like, that's the target audience. And so, yeah, when you come at it with the eyes, again, of 20, 30, 40 something, whatever, and you're like, this is, really kind of simple and there's not much depth, and it kind of feels that way sometimes.
Yeah.
But, yeah, I think, I would encourage people to give it a shot. Again, if it's not for you, it's not for you. Like, that's totally valid. Every person is different. Not everything is going to land for everybody. Yeah. But I would encourage you to give it a shot. And give it a shot, like, consume it through the eyes of the intended audience. And think about what this would do for... Like, what would this have done for 6-year-old you?
Yeah, exactly.
If 6-year-old you had read this book... Would you have resonated with this story? Would it have made you feel something? Would it have given you some life lesson, some moral that you could have carried into the playground, or whatever with your friends, or,
Right.
Dealing with some difficulty, some hardship that is hard as a kid to process because you're young. Like, think about it in that lens. If you can't do the, abstract 6-year-old, generic 6-year-old, think back to who you were at that age.
Or, if you have a kid.
Yes, or if you have a kid.
Would they appreciate this? What would they get out of this? You have to think outside yourself maybe and think of, what will this do for someone who is the target audience? Just because you're not the target audience of a book does not mean you cannot enjoy it.
Yeah.
You don't have to. And you might not. It doesn't mean you can't, though. And the other thing I will say, and I'm going to say this very carefully, I do as good of a job as I can promoting the middle grade books, and others who like them do as well. And I know that it doesn't always help, but we are doing our best. That's another factor possibly, but I won't get into it too much. I loved doing this.
Me too.
Oh, I would say we should do this again, but we might have to wait a while.
Yeah. We're gonna need a larger sample. We got to add to the sample to start generating some more takes.
But once again, all in good fun. These are things that we think about often, and things that should be talked about more, and that's where we're here talking about them. You had really good ones.
Thank you. You did too.
Thanks. I hope that all of you enjoyed this episode. Feel free to share your controversial Star Wars opinions, or your Star Wars book hot takes, if you will. Again,
or also don't feel free in some cases.
All in good fun, and this is all because we love Star Wars books, because we want more people to experience more of them, and because we want them to do better. Thank you for listening, and happy Star Wars month. Now This Is Lit is part of the Faraway Fandom Network. It is produced by Davor and written, hosted, and edited by me. Jose Jimenez designed our podcast art. You can keep up with the show on Substack at Now This Is Lit, and find the show wherever you get your podcasts. There are so many ways you can support the show, and all of those ways are linked in the show description. The newest way is to become a member of our Patreon. For $1 a month, you can get access to an exclusive show and a sticker. And if we get 500 people to support the Patreon per month, I can hire an editor. That would be great for me, and maybe for you too. So if you'd like to support the show with just $1 a month, you can do it that way. Or you can just keep listening and sharing the episodes. That is also helpful, and I appreciate it. For more book reviews and Star Wars Book Celebration, follow Star Wars Book Reviews on Instagram and TikTok.